Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here in relatively big numbers. I wish there would have been more, obviously. It's interesting enough, we're going to talk about netting, a very popular subject in the past few years, because this venture started in 2018, I think. We got the first request from our membership saying, you should be doing netting for the whole membership, for the FIDI membership. And to give you a bit of background, we tried this before, 13, 14 years ago, and it failed back then. It did not work. There were good reasons for it because we had the wrong approach to it at that time, and we've now changed that approach. And I'll let you show later on how we did that and how it's different. But now we feel that there's momentum building. So after that first initial question of 2018, we have continued to work on it, had some legal hurdles every now and then, some roadblocks, which were then sorted out, and we're now ready to move on. Meanwhile, we've seen that the consensus is growing, that people see the value of having netting, and that they will support it as soon as it hits ground. We hope that it will be supported as soon as it hits ground, in any case. So what I would like to do today, first of all, I want to invite Svante Kandel to come to the stage as well. Svante is our provider, from a company called Treasury Management Services, right? Can you shortly present yourself, please?
That's correct. Svante Kandel, nice to meet you all. I'm a Swede, living in Switzerland, and our company is based in Switzerland as well. We assist large corporates and NGOs in what we call the in-house banking activities, meaning that we try to aggregate resources within the group to use them as efficiently as possible, minimize risk, of course, and the aim is simply to keep the banks at bay. And that's, of course, the ambition with the netting project as well.
Right, and to start the session off, and maybe some of you will have seen this already in the past couple of years, I just want to present quickly on what netting actually is, so that we are all on the same page, we all understand what it means. And then it's a Q&A, because I can imagine, and I've had many questions already on the floor out there, what will it do for us, how can we use it, some issues that countries may have, etc., etc. So there's a Q&A, and part I can answer, but part will be, if it gets too technical, then Svante will answer, no doubt. So I'm happy that Svante is here, so thanks for being there. Quickly on netting, and what we'll cover today are the purposes of netting. First of all, I want to see that we are clear on what the common understanding is of netting, what does it actually mean, how does it work in a FIDI community somehow, what does it do in practice, and this is where Svante comes in mostly, because it's all through systems, etc. What are the advantages for the FIDI members? Perhaps even for FIDI could be a question as well. What's the investment and what is the ROI on this, and where do we go next? That's an important matter as well, obviously. First of all, to make a definition of netting. It's funny that we actually all do netting already, all of us. But we name it differently, we call it offsetting. Right? You have a company A working with company B, they trade business with each other back and forth. You usually don't pay every single invoice and receive every single invoice. You have a kind of account running up at a certain time and you cut it off, and now one of them pays. That's offsetting. Netting is actually no different. It's the same thing. It's offsetting, but on a much larger scale. Not between 2 parties or 3 parties, but between 600 parties, all 600 members of FIDI. That is what netting actually is in a nutshell. So that makes it very understandable for everyone, I think. But formally, it's reducing risk in financial contracts, and you do that through combining, aggregating multiple invoices into one net amount per month. That's the whole purpose. Why do we do that? Well, there's many, and I'll show you later on, but it's to reduce costs somehow. That's the main thing. We're trying to reduce costs in terms of banking, foreign exchange, in admin that you do. It's a real cost saver, I believe. Right, continue. Where are we now today? 600 affiliates we have, more or less, 594 to be precise right now, and they trade with each other continuously. What we don't know exactly is how much you trade with each other. That's unknown because we don't get any reports from you on that one. So we have made a few assumptions at a certain time how much that is, that kind of trading. But it's important. It's continuous, and we trade each other every single day of the year from one company to another and back, obviously. That is great, and thank you for trading with each other, but in terms of payments, that's very inefficient somehow. It doesn't always work well. You receive invoices and receipts from many companies every month. When I was working for a moving company, I would have to do payments 120 per month somehow, international, and also in various currencies as well, obviously. That's not always that easy to track down at that time. And you do that multiple times per month. Not just once, but multiple times per month. So the offsetting we already spoke about between two companies is often very complex. It's a much neglected aspect in offsetting, I believe, that you have a kind of a running account between two companies, and you feel safe as long as it's in balance. So you keep running the account up. You don't do any payments because it's in balance. Why should we do a payment? It's in balance. The problem lies when all of a sudden that company fails or goes bankrupt. You got a huge outstanding, and there's not any money coming back. There's no more balance at that time. So the offsetting is a great aspect of our business, but we very often forget to put on a cutoff date to say, now we have to stop, we have to settle it, because otherwise the risk is going too high. Even if it's in balance, the risk will be high at that time. So that's not always working to our advantage. With netting, there's a solution to this. So instead of having that complex graph you just saw, it becomes much easier with one netting center in the middle. One payment or receipt per month in your own chosen currency, or currencies, could be multiple. So one payment or receipt per month. How does it work? Company A owes $1,000 to company C, C owes $1,200 to company B, and B owes $800 to company A. Very simple, we can do that. But if it goes to a netting center, this is what it looks like. A and C pay 200 euro to the netting center, and the netting center pays 400 euro to B, and everybody's happy. And it's just for payments, so we're not doing your invoicing, we're not processing how invoicing works. It's when payment is due, this is then what happens with netting at that time. If there are any questions, do let me know, but maybe we should just go through the presentation first before we continue on this. So a big question, I referred to it earlier, to a system we tried before, 12, 13 years ago, is who initiates the uploading of an invoice, and therefore making it subject to payment. 13 years ago, 14 years ago, it was done it was receivable-driven, as we call that. Receivable-driven. The one who issued the invoice uploaded it at a certain time to the netting system, therefore forcing the other party to pay. Although that is it's great, if that works, it's fantastic, but in practice, it doesn't work. It works if it's one big company in the world with various organizations all tied up with one ownership. Then it works beautifully. It can be receivable-driven, and it works. But if you are all separate businesses, all legal entities, independent from each other, we are each other's friends, no doubt, but sometimes we're each other's enemies, or customer, or supplier, or competitor. It doesn't always work. So the mistake back then was, and again, it's a fantastic principle, receivable-driven, but in practice, it does not work. It therefore failed right away. So we've chosen to do it differently. We have it payable-driven. Payable-driven, meaning that the one, actually it was the booker, who received the business, he received the invoice, he uploads the invoice to the system. It's important to understand how it works. It's the debtor who uploads the invoice, not the creditor in this case. And he or she does that at a time when it reaches the agreed payment term. We've talked about this many times. FIDI does not impose a payment term. That's up to you, between you and your partner, what the payment term is. If you agree that the payment term is 45 days, would be fantastic nowadays, if it's 45 days, then great. That invoice will be uploaded and will be ticked for payment in 45 days by the debtor. And indeed, after 45 days, it will get paid in the cycle that is near to that 45 days, obviously. It's like a cycle. That's how it works. That is how it's going to work. We've chosen for once a month. If we feel that we should do it twice per month, hey, that's possible, right? That system can do twice per month as well. Doesn't really matter. Absolutely, there we are. When that invoice is uploaded by the debtor, the creditor has a bit of time to check it, to make sure it's okay. You would think, well, why? It's always okay. I mean, it's my invoice, so why should it not be okay? But there could be wrong data in there. They could have ticked the wrong invoice number, wrong amount, it's whatever. It's a bit like it works in your daily life. If you receive an invoice, you check. If you receive a payment, you check whether it matches whatever invoice you send out. So this is not different. You have a few days to check if it's conform. If you don't do anything, it will pass on, and therefore it will be due for payment. And then the netting happens at a set date once per month. All clear so far? Okay, perfect. Practically, gets a bit technical here. Bear with me, Svante. As a participant, as a FIDI affiliate, obviously you have to have internet access. That's a given nowadays. You have the familiarity with a netting cycle. You will know a year beforehand what the netting cycle is, what the payment dates are, when you have to send in invoices, etc. You know that a year beforehand, you got a whole calendar for you, and you'll get some login ideas. And there is a netting center in the FIDI that does a user administration, does training for affiliates, similar to what we're doing today, but then a lot more granular, I think, and will supply operating guidelines. The process is that you upload payable invoices to the netting system. There's an invoice reconciliation time for netting, or perhaps a dispute resolution if there are disputes on this. The mismatches are resolved, and then at a certain time, after all that is being done and being managed by FIDI, we start executing the foreign exchange transactions, and we issue a final netting statement. And then it's up to the ones who have a net payable position to pay up, and the ones who do not have a net receivable position is to receive it after a certain time. And that is done through the netting center. They will pay, we get paid by the ones who have the net payable position, and then after a few days, FIDI pays out the ones who have a net receivable position. That's, in a nutshell, how it works practically. The netting cycle looks like this, and this is just an example. We have now set the third week of the month, for example. It can be any time of the day, but this is what it looks like. The cycle opens after the previous one is closed, a couple of days after, and then you have 2 weeks' time to upload invoices. Then there's a cutoff. No more invoices to be uploaded, please. We stop. There's a week time where we reconcile, where we make sure that everything is correct, that we get any disputes solved somehow. If they can't get this solved, then they will be taken out of the netting cycle, of course, but we assume that we can get that all sorted out. And then there's about a week time during which we do the fixing of the netting rates, we do the foreign exchange, buy the currencies, and then members pay to us, to the netting center, and FIDI, a few days later, pays out to the ones who need to receive money. That's what the netting cycle looks like, and then we go back to the beginning, and we start a new cycle.
Just a question. I probably should know the answer, but I'll ask the question anyway. During this week reconciliation period, Svante maybe even, what happens if, for example, it falls over a significant holiday where there's multiple days off in a particular region? Call it Ramadan, Easter, whatever it might be. What if the calendar is such that the netting period to reconcile is shortened by, say, a significant material number of days, maybe it's 2 or 3 days? Is there any mechanism there to extend during those particular moments where the calendar might not allow to give us a full reconciliation period? Or do we stay true to that week and it is what it is regardless of what happens? Just there's more of a question. I'm not sure we've flushed that.
I'm not sure myself, but I'm not sure if the system would allow for that.
Any comments, Svante?
Well, we try to adapt the netting calendar as such, because there is a calendar steering the whole process, and which you will know about for, at least a year ahead in time. That one is, of course, adapted to major banking holidays, etc. So it should not, in reality, be any conflict in timing.
And maybe just to the group as well, I mean, I'm familiar with the netting system from another organization, of course, and that week period is plenty of time normally. You're already very familiar with your invoices. It's not really that much reconciliation to do. It's pretty clean. But maybe from the audience, any concerns around that reconciliation period for a week? If it happens over holidays, anyone you experience, you want to share? Any comments?
Knowing that you know this beforehand, well before.
Yeah. Well, that was what I was thinking also, because all our holidays are different. So
Yeah.
it could change. I'm working, and yet in England you guys are out. So how does that flip? You're talking about reconciliation, maybe for just where the bank is. Or what your banking holidays are, but how does that work for all of us?
Again, this is a whole week, so it's rare that you have a whole week off. And again, you know it beforehand, so you can kind of prepare for this as well. I don't think we should deviate from that calendar once we've had it fixed. Then I would stick to it, because people are expecting payments, and it has to do with cash management after a while. Hey, your finance managers will know when cash is arriving. They're counting on that to happen. And if we all of a sudden extend that, then it gets into play. But good question.
We're always working. I'm just talking about you guys.
Ah, yeah, of course. Yeah. we only have 11 bank holidays in Belgium. Not too bad. Maybe the questions are, but no, go ahead. But maybe the answers are in the next few slides. But go ahead.
Right. Yes, I spoke to a few Harmony members this week and asked them about the netting. They were all extremely positive. And I think it's even maybe a bit of a fear for them if this is going to happen. But my question is, what is the difference between the system you've chosen and the Harmony system? And what are the lessons learned, except from the one which you said about debtor and receiver? What are the lessons which we learned 14 years ago?
I'm going to refer a little bit back to Svante here. As far as system software is concerned, there are not that many options in the world, correct?
That's correct. And CoProcess is probably the leading product in this field.
So CoPress is the system software that we will be choosing, which is also used by Harmony, by the way. So, and then it has proven in the past, 25 years, I'm not sure, that it is a worthwhile system that works well. We have not chosen that because of Harmony, it's just because it is the best system around right now, so that's why we've chosen that one.
It's probably safe to say that we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's not like we're having product A and product B. I think it's not a cut and paste by any means, but it's kind of cut and paste. It's a process. There's an existing legacy system that works in the system. We're working with Svante to work with the parameters, but the process is the process, the software is the software. You probably won't find there's that many material differences between the two programs. In fact, they're probably quite similar.
And not because we copy it, but because that's just how the system works. It's not rocket science.
No.
Well, not for him at least. For me, it's a little bit rocket science. But I'll try to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. CoProcess, I just mentioned, that's a software system that we'll be having a license on, obviously. We, the netting center, the FIDI netting center, is the one who is responsible for that. That's clear. And as far as users are concerned, Svante, they have different access possibilities, correct? Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yes, as I said, CoProcess is probably the leading product in this field, and it has a very long history, first of all. It exists since about 25 years. We are working with it since 15 years. Segregation of duty works excellent in the system, and all security aspects are considered. So, in principle, it's definitely possible to, for example, differentiate between uploaders of information. We have other people signing off the payments. In reality, we are trying to duplicate what you do with your bank today. I mean, you have a process in place where you send a payment instruction, someone else signs it off, and it's pretty much the same process here, just easier.
Do you want to get mic'd up?
Can you hear me okay? Am I okay with my voice? I'm a bit scratchy as we move on with the conference. But it's maybe worth knowing, maybe it's super obvious, but the banking process is completely separate from the payments system. So as whatever internal controls you have in your organization to manage your cash flow, that will remain. The owner or the CFO or whoever has control of pushing that button to pay for the bank remains with your company. You are not handing over payment control to a software system. You absolutely have control. So there's a report that comes out, you agree with the report, and then there's a financial transaction like you would a debit or credit with any other banking transaction. So those are two really separate transactions. There's the banking transaction that is absolutely separate to the actual netting system. So that it's not built into it where anything happens on an automated basis. Full control by the payee.
Correct.
To press the button when they want to present it from their bank and what have you. So they're two really separate entities. Is that
Correct.
fair?
Yeah, that's important indeed. The netting scope, and again, here we go into a little bit of assumptions because we don't know. It's payable-driven, we've all agreed on that one. We reckon there's about 480 participants. I know we have 600 members, but some are head offices, some are branches, so we assume head offices will be mostly involved, so 480. Now here we're into guessing work. Number of invoices. We don't know. But you kind of know about the business I worked before, and then you start extrapolating a bit, and it could be anywhere between 50,000 and 80,000 invoices per annum, per year, running through the system. What's the value of that? I don't know, anywhere between 120 and 200 million? I could be wrong with a couple of million. Who cares about a couple of million after all? Cycle frequency is going to be every month. Number of currency pairs is, again, we don't know yet. It depends on what currencies you want to get paid in or you want to run this system. We think 20 to 30, that would be the max, I would think, right?
Yeah, something around.
You haven't seen much bigger than that?
No,
No.
rather smaller numbers.
Okay. The bank is not sure yet. We're looking at our own bank, FIDI's bank, KBC Bank Belgium. They still have to make their offers. We have to make sure that they are competitive. So there's an RFP going on right now to see which bank is the most competitive to serve as the bank account for the netting center. At this time, it's a system only for FIDI affiliates if once it gets launched. There will come, I'm quite sure that after a few, maybe a year or so, or a year and a half, the question will come from you guys, can we involve other non-FIDI companies into this? Could be suppliers, could be RMCs, even RMCs would say. And we talked to RMCs earlier this week, and they said, what are the new things at FIDI? We said, well, this is stuff that's coming, and they said, that's very interesting. They really asked questions about this, right, Derek?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think... I mean,
Your microphone.
From their standpoint, of course, they're arranging payments to anywhere, I don't know how many payments they have on their cycle. I mean, on a monthly basis, they may pay 50 to 100 to 250. I have no idea, depending on the scale and size of the RMC. So for them to make one transaction payment is super interesting. But then there's also concern about privacy, security, data. So they're a bit tentative, but it's early days. But the priority for us is our FIDI membership. That is stage one. Let's get that right. And then we'll see where it goes from there. But there is, I think, some opportunity. I don't think we've hit the ceiling with the product. It could have benefits further afield.
But only if you guys agree with it.
Yeah, it's
For now, it's only FIDI affiliates, obviously. So what are the advantages for the booker, for the debtor, the one who has to pay and has to upload the payable invoice? Well, first of all, fewer international transactions. Instead of doing 80 transactions, or 20, or 10, it's reduced to 1 per month, not more. Secondly, the payment date remains under control of the debtor. I know they have to send in the invoices when it's ready for payment on the agreed payment term. We count on that. Obviously, if they don't upload the invoice, it's up to you to go back to them and say, hey, hang on, why have you not uploaded that invoice? Because you agreed you would pay it in 45 or 60 days or whatever it is, putting the pressure on you. But in principle, this is how it works. They send up the payment or the invoice when they're ready for payment, and hopefully that is on the agreed payment date. This is a big one, the foreign exchange. I'll get back to that in a minute. Reduced bank fees, less transactions, less fees. Right? That makes sense. And admin savings, sometimes underestimated, but once this system works well, and we're all used to it, and we have that kind of social control where that if they don't upload the invoice, you can knock on the door saying, hey, do your job, because otherwise I won't be doing my job and sending my payable invoices. So you get a kind of mechanism going where it's getting fluid, where it's going right. Well, in that case, guess how much you can save on chasing your debtors? Right? You don't have to chase them all the time because it's in the whole netting cycle. You know what's going to happen. If something is missed, then you go after it. But otherwise, don't have to chase them that much as before. So it's a big admin saving for you as well, I think, as a debtor. A little bit on the foreign exchange, and this is where it gets complicated for me. I'll try to follow through, and help me, Svante, if I start goofing on this one. So we assume earlier, let's say 200 million of annual volume of netting. A part of that is not touched by foreign exchange because it's from US dollar to US dollar or from euro to euro. We assume 25%. Could be wrong. We call it domestic payments. There's no impact on currencies, so we don't regard those. We assume as well that 50% of the international payments are for payments that are less than 10,000 euro. That's quite common, I think, in our industry, that payments are less than 10,000 euro. Sometimes they're more, so we assume the rest of the payments are more than 10,000 euro. The FX spread, I'm not sure if you're familiar, I call it commission, but in currency midst, they call it the FX spread, is the cost of changing currencies. And that is anywhere between 0.6 and 1.2%. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's definitely not an exaggeration. Various banks have other rates, depends on the country as well. But if taken an example with the UBS, the biggest Swiss bank, spreads for amounts up to $25,000 is around 3%.
3% even, okay. Yeah. So we're very moderate here.
I would say so.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. So, and often you don't see that. You don't see that what you're paying. It's like
No, it's well hidden.
Well hidden,
The
yeah.
banks are smart.
The banks are very smart.
So it never appears on a paper.
Yeah. So the FX spread, that's a cost you normally pay if you don't go through netting. I'm going to compare the two now. Without netting, you have on the left side, without netting. Again, domestic payments, out of 200 million in total, domestic payments we exclude, right? Not important. We split up the other two, the 150 million, into 75 million for payments under 10,000, 75 million for payments more than 10,000, but hopefully below 250,000. I don't think that's the case. Do you usually do payments of 5 million, anybody? Setting out payments for 5 million every now and then? That doesn't happen. Great, I'm happy with that. So we apply those rates, those spread rates. So the cost of foreign exchange for the membership, for their payments, is 1.3 million. Okay? Give and take, eh? Every country is different. Maybe you've got a great relationship with your bank and you get a lot better rates, but this more or less. With netting, same thing, 50 million. But now we don't have to divide between the two payment amounts, because we know there's going to be 100 million. Why 100 million? Not 150 million? Because of netting, we're offsetting. Remember, we're offsetting. So a number of these amounts are not going to be taken into account because we're offsetting them. So the sum becomes smaller, 100 million. Okay, look at that. If you have 100 million to offer to the bank, this is the FX spread. No longer this. This is what it is. Give and take. Even if it's 0.04, 0.05, the difference is still immense. So when I say that the FX trading is the biggest saving there is, it absolutely is. And who does it go to? To me. I wish. No, it goes back to you, to every member. FIDI does not take a cut out of that. It goes back to, the benefits go back to them. We have to. We are a not-for-profit association. We can deploy certain services like this that could be considered as commercial services, but we are not for profit, so we commit to any profits that come from that, go back to the membership right away, fully, 100%. We talked about it in the board a couple of times, right? The question came even from Svante saying, do you want to take a commission out of that one, right? It's very attractive. I said, no, nothing. Goes back to the membership. But thanks for the suggestion, by the way.
Okay, you're welcome. Just one clarification there regarding when you talk about offsetting. Offsetting in this sense means that a need for selling dollar for euro has the opposite need for someone else in the organization, meaning that we can lower the volume quite substantially. In your business, that would mean no need to go to the track dealer. We can do the business internally.
Okay, thank you. All understood, more or less? So these were the amounts I was referring to. So we had the advantages for the debtor. The creditor has advantages as well, the one who raised the invoice after all. The same thing, fewer international transactions. Instead of receiving 20 payments, they receive one, and then they can reconcile. A guaranteed settlement date. We're not saying that we guarantee that the time that they will upload the invoice, but once it's uploaded, you know where it's going to get paid. And this is an advantage for your cash management. Most financial managers would be happy to know that a certain amount will come in at a certain date, because then they can start planning for what needs to be paid to other suppliers. Every morning, finance managers, in my days at least, was like, what's on the bank account today? We don't know. Well, in this case, you know at least one amount will arrive at a certain date. You know exactly which amount it is. Foreign exchange, not that much of application to creditors. It's more to the debtors. It's usually the payer who takes the FX risk, I think. Some countries, they share. But anyway, so there's a slight advantage there as well. Reduced bank fees and same thing, admin savings. So plenty of advantages for the agent, for the creditor. Only good news, guys? Yeah, it is. But this is our plan. Take a bicycle, slightly uphill, we'll get there very soon, and then everybody will be happy, hooray, hooray, hooray. That's not how it went. It went a little bit differently. It looked a bit like this. That's normal by every project, I think, and we kind of counted on that at a certain time, but it took longer than we thought. I do agree. There were some hurdles, as I spoke before, legal hurdles. Can FIDI deploy such an activity? So we have to get lawyers involved to investigate that, and we did, and in the end they take a long time to answer, right? Some have not answered yet even. But by now we have the confirmation, yes, we can do this. We're not considered a bank, so we don't need a banking license. We're not considered as, we don't need a license for payment services, as they call that. We just need to make sure that we apply or are conform with anti-money laundering regulation. That's very important nowadays, not only in Belgium, but in any country in the world. So we need to conform with those. That means that we have to know our customers. And funny enough, you are our customers, and we do know you. That's actually a fact. He asked me earlier, do you know your customers? I say, we know them quite well. We have quite a lot of details on them. So yeah, we know that. And we then have to document that and make sure to have it at hand when we get our audit. Is it every year, 2 years? Or?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years we get an audit to make sure that we do things right. So we're doing it the legal way in any case. But where are we now? I hope we're here. It's raining in Scotland today, I think, so we're getting out of here, and then it's a long slope towards success where we can implement it. In reality, we discussed it many times. We had a delegates meeting just a couple of days ago again, where we explained what was happening after all those years. We're getting there. The netting services will be added to the statutes of FIDI as a facility that we can do. Then it's our job to work out all the rules and the regulations and the fees and come back to you guys for a final vote in October. And then we can get started on this. But meanwhile, we're working in the background already because there is a large support at this time for doing this. To what Michiel just said from the Haan, ask anybody, is netting a good thing? The question is, yes, it is a good thing. Why not? It brings savings, and there's no particular effort to do, other than a few things. You may have to do some IT investment. For particularly the larger ones who are much automated, you may have to do some IT investment to get your invoices into co-process. There is some facilities there, right?
Yes, there are very good interfaces. The interfaces are extremely simple.
Can you speak a little bit louder, please?
Or can you turn up the...
No, we're loud.
Okay. The interfaces are extremely simple and can be adapted. Anyone who can produce a report out of their AP ledger can easily, for example in Excel or text or whatever, can easily convert this into a CSV file which is uploaded into the system. And the data that goes in is extremely basic. I mean, it's payer, payee, currency, amount, and due date. And invoice number, of course.
Okay. There is a legal and financial risk, obviously, and that is down to FIDI. So FIDI has a risk, that's true. Because if you don't pay, if you have a net payable position and you don't pay, then FIDI has to cough up that money and pay, because your receiving parties are counting on that money to come into their account. That's true. So that's a legal and financial risk for FIDI. How do we counter that? Well, first of all, we assume that those who upload their payable invoices are ready to pay. Otherwise, they would not upload the invoices. Kind of makes sense, right? Secondly, not paying will have consequences. We're working out the rules right now, but in my mind, if you don't pay a net payable position that you've committed to, then you should not be in FIDI any longer. Then you should be out quite quickly even and terminate that company and stop the bleeding on time. Lastly, there are insurance possibilities. So we are looking into buying an insurance to cover for potentials like these. But again, it's unlikely because I assume that those who upload invoices are ready to pay the invoices. It's a bit odd that you upload them and a week later you said, but I don't have any money for this. That doesn't work, and therefore there will be some severe penalties, obviously, all to be worked out and to be voted on in the next few months. Critical mass is key. I love this little graph. I use it many times for anything that's new. What we need when it gets started, we need some early adopters to pop in right away and start using it. And the bigger they are, the better, because that will help getting the system started. Because it's a self-fulfilling thing, you know. Once someone is using it, if Soblag is using it and uploading the payable invoices, and your correspondents, your other agents are not doing the same thing, what you're going to do, you're going to give them a call, say, hey, I'm doing it, now you should do your thing as well, otherwise it looks a bit silly here. So it will have that effect, it will have that impact, and that's supposed to be, because in the end, we want this to be a benefit for the whole membership. Again, there is only benefits here, there's no cost involved, other than a yearly cost, which is, you know, about 500 euro, we'll get that in a minute. But we want to have those early adopters to quickly go into the early majority. Once we have this, the race is run. And everybody will benefit.
Just on that, for what it's worth, we do have some messaging we've received from some very large moving companies in our space that have agreed and have certainly given indication that they will support this on day one. So it's not like we're going to have the big bookers standing by, waiting. I believe that there is a critical mass already, if they are true to their word. The test will be when the rubber hits the road, but there's certainly some strong messaging from our membership that they want this and that they are big bookers, they control a significant amount of business, and that they will be ready to go on day one with this program. So just for what it's worth, that will be tested only when the on button is flipped. But for now, there's some good strong messaging in the group that we have certainly some buy-in and alignment on that. So thank you.
So critical mass is key, and I hope that it will get supported very quickly. It needs time to settle in. I do appreciate that. It's not going to be we switch it on and a month later everybody's there. Svante would love that, of course. No, it will take some time for people to settle in, to get used to it, to the system, do some training, overcome perhaps some habits that are conservative habits that we all have, obviously. But once it starts rolling, it really starts working. Are there any questions? And I said before you asked that question, we are still working out all the rules, but we think, and the fees, we think that the cost to you is about not more than 500 euro per year. Per year. And that 500 euro is to operate the FIDI netting center.
Hi.
Nick.
Nick. 3 questions. I don't
Do
steal
one by
any
one,
answer.
please.
One by one. When does FIDI provide me with the list of the uploaded invoices that I'm due to be paid?
Do you know that?
Well, everything is available online. So the second it's uploaded, it's visible for the counterparty as well.
So as a receiver, I can check when the invoice that I'm expecting to be uploaded is uploaded. I can challenge the party that hasn't uploaded and say, why haven't you? Hurry up and do so.
But you have to wait until the cutoff date.
Of course, yeah, I have to respect the dates. The other question, technical, I've issued a credit note against my invoice for a discount of some sort. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? Not every company raises a corresponding contra invoice in their system, which you might expect they could put in on their side. How do you deal with credit notes?
Well, credit notes are allowed. We can put limits on credit notes because they can be abused in the system. But basically, it's no issue to input credit notes.
So the system will recognise both a debit and a credit from the same party doing the upload.
Definitely.
And my last question is a bit contentious.
I was counting on that, actually.
But can you tell us that the supplier to this service is different to the supplier that services another part of our industry?
Apart from the software, the same, but the supplier is different.
The supplier is different to the Harmony supplier.
So you ask if the supplier of the services, TMS, is different than the supplier of Harmony. And that is indeed correct. The software is the same, but our supplier, our partner in this, is different than the one that will service Harmony. All good? Mark?
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. A very good initiative, so very good. Thank you for your hard work so far. You answered my question, which was going through my mind, of why is it an account payables-driven system, because that gives responsibility to the payables that they agreed to the invoices. I think that's the point.
Yeah.
But will there be, or may I suggest, if it could be considered that there may be some kind of process if some accounts payable is not being uploaded after a period of time, that FIDI could have an intervention, like a dispute resolution, to get it uploaded, if you see what I mean? Because for a small company, we're really relying on some of these big guys to put those payables in, and if for whatever reason they're not doing that, you know, we would need more assistance than me picking up the phone and begging people to do that, right?
I get that.
So just to consider.
FIDI has other systems that work for that. There's a dispute resolution, and there's also FASI, obviously, who will obligate members to live up to their commitments. I would strictly separate this from this. This is a payment system. I would not get our dispute resolution directly involved in the payment system saying you should have uploaded this one. But you're right, absolutely, and we have existing... Sorry, you want to say something? Give you the microphone to make...
So now I speak as professional cooperation guidelines and accepted at the delegates meeting, so ready for distribution to the affiliates at large, are updated PCGs with a new section for invoice dispute resolution, a clear process that sets quite specific timelines on each of the parties, including a part of the timeline for that toing and froing whilst there's a discussion, and in effect a deadline at which point the unresolved dispute should go to dispute resolution. So separate from FASI and separate from the netting project, a process for resolving a dispute or not, forcing it then to dispute resolution service through FIDI, the result of which should determine payment or non-payment of the invoice, and then it's fed into the system. And within it, it even determines the point at which the invoice is effectively taken out of the credit terms that have been agreed between the two parties whilst the dispute is being resolved. Now that's going to be launched, I mean it's approved now, so launched to the affiliates at large now, i.e. immediately following our conference. And I do urge all affiliates to look at that section because it's potentially one of the most valuable sections of the PCGs in our day-to-day activities.
It's a great tool. That answer your question, Mark? Thank you. Lorenz?
Thank you very much. You covered very well the advantages of the system in terms of the FX spread.
Thank you.
But there is also, of course, the component of the exchange rate. It happens rarely, but it does happen that exchange rates change more than 10% from one day to the other. If I understand your presentation correctly, there's one cut-off date per month where you look at the exchange rate. Now, if by coincidence on that day the exchange rate changes 10%, bad luck for the agent in that country. Or is there any mechanism in your system that you say if there's an exchange rate that is above or below a certain threshold, we'll pause it for a day or two to reevaluate?
Very good question. I have no answer. Svante?
Well, if there is such a volatile market as you indicate there, one could, of course, consider that things are delayed somewhat. But basically, no one can predict the future. And this process is just about executing at the most efficient cost possible. So really, we do not consider if this is the right moment or could there come a better moment in 5 minutes. We just execute and we simply do not speculate about what's going to happen. But surely you have a point in such a particular market, what to do, and that is of course something we could have a discussion about and also introduce in the rules and procedures that will guide us or direct us in the management of the netting process.
Certainly a good point, Lorenz, thank you for bringing that up. There is a certain amount of risk even outside the netting system. In the description you just painted, the picture you just painted, that there is an element of risk in how we conduct ourselves today with volatile exchange rates at such a magnitude, where there's an incredible swing unforeseen on a given day. That can happen in our systems today, how we traditionally wire money back and forth. However, it is a valid point, and I think that the FIDI board and Svante will take that away to see if there's any mechanisms we can do for maybe some tweaking, or even some listening that will be done to even reconcile between agents a discrepancy of a certain percentage. There's something there. It's certainly worth looking at, but I think it's also worth acknowledging that we have that risk today already in such a volatile market. But let's look at it and we'll take it away. Yeah, fair. Thank you. Lorenz?
Question for Marcel York. There's a microphone coming to you.
In fact, it's not a question, but a story and an experience I wanted to share with the audience in regards to your sentence when you said the admin effort is often underestimated. In 2017, I sold the moving company, Packenpex, the moving part of Packenpex to Goslin, and Packenpex was part of the Harmony network. And with that transaction, you expect all sorts of impacts and surprises and things. But we have not, counted on the impact of the netting drop to the point of totally overwhelming our accounting people. It's a small department, by the amount of emails and the contra offset proposals, and the flooding of no longer being, benefiting from the netting system was so huge that we lost the manager there in the transaction, overwhelmed, burnout, and replaced by, I think, 2 or 3 people even to get it back under control. So it is huge. The benefit of netting is huge. And I only realized it when it was gone. It's one of these things, when it works, you just take it for granted. It's no longer there. You say, oh my God. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? In the back, Michiel?
Thank you. You mentioned, I think rightfully so, that you need a certain scale to really get successful. Are you also thinking about making it mandatory for all FIDI members?
The mandatory element in it is that you all contribute to the system, meaning you all pay the fee, the €500, whatever it is, per year. That's the mandatory element in it. We can't force anybody to upload invoices. I don't have the controls to do that. I don't have the police to do that. I can't put a gun against your head saying, upload the invoice now. It's not going to work. And therefore, no, it's not. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. If you say don't want to use the benefits of this, feel free. We feel it's so compelling that you will use it. But the mandatory element in it, that we are in solidarity, all contributing to the system. If we all do that, it's manageable. It's €500 per month, per year, not per month, and that will cover the cost for FIDI. So no, it's not mandatory. Social mandatory, if you like.
Yeah, I would say that I think that the mandatory element will come from the delegates meeting. It will come from you. The FIDI board is not going to impose that on you. That will be an organic event that I think we might get there one day.
Yeah.
But that will be driven by the membership, not by the board. So that will, let's see how it plays out. If I was a betting man, I'd bet that eventually we're going to have this as a product that might just be mandatory. However, there is a caveat about the mandatory component. There are some regions of the world, specifically India, not sure about Pakistan. There's even a gray area within India, whether or not they can receive money from the netting system. They certainly cannot pay into the netting system. So there will be forgiveness on fees. If your country, by legislation, is not able to participate, of course, we're not going to charge you. But that's a very small region.
That will have to be documented.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the case of Pakistan or India, I believe, they can indeed receive money. They can't pay money. If you can receive money, and you are, by tradition, a receivable country, and we assume that India is a receivable country more than it is a payable country, the benefits are there, obviously. There's a question there in the back. Philippa.
Hi. We've got people in our team who enjoy the control over when we make payments and so on, and the benefits of having that control over exchange rates. You mentioned that the benefit will go back to the membership. How would that be calculated, and how would you give that benefit back, so the exchange rate gains?
Well, by simply not only adding that spread that there is and not keeping any money for FIDI, and that will be audited and it will be reported every year to the delegates meeting how it's done and how the financing has happened. The financing of the netting center, FIDI Netting Center, is through your contribution that you do, and that's it. But the FX spread that's going to be applied on your payments is for you, because FIDI is not taking a cut out of those. I don't know how else we can demonstrate that.
Yeah,
or document
I think it's something like on your monthly financial statement, you're going to say, oh, and here's your financial gain this month. I think the comparison would be, Philippa, is if you ran a comparative side by side, is if you did it in your own banking system, what it would look like and compared to them. But I think to Svante's point, the banks are quite clever about making it difficult to extract those numbers specifically. But I think you'd have to almost run two systems concurrently to measure that benefit, because I don't think we can actually come up with that specific number of what it is.
But you've got the experience.
Yeah, just speaking from my personal experience, and for those that have experience in netting systems, my goodness, I can't put a dollar figure on it, Philippa, but there are the exchange rate, the access to the exchange rates when you're, what was the scope? Was it 200 million?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about your business, but $200 million in the foreign exchange markets has significant buying power, I would say, Svante?
Well, better than the 10,000.
Yeah, relatively
Definitely,
speaking.
yeah.
You probably deal
I know.
with billions, but in our little world of the moving industry, a $200 million aggregate certainly has a bit more leverage than our individual agencies could ever do. So I understand the question. I've tried to find that number myself. It's a bit elusive,
I
but
think
there's a gut feeling. John Roller.
Just wondering, when we get this payment, if the exchange rate which was exercised would be shown. I get where Philippa's coming from. If we can see the exchange rate that's being paid, and we know the exchange rate we would have paid, or the typical exchange rate we could have paid, we have some sense of the benefit that we're getting.
Well, the system is completely transparent there. You will receive the rate that is dealt with the bank. Of course, we cannot provide the comparative figure that you would have had in your specific bank, but we have reports and analysis tools that on a monthly basis computes the saving during that specific cycle.
We could at least estimate it based on the exchange rates we commonly pay against what we're paying in the netting system.
Yeah, you will see
and
those.
if we want to try and recognize some sort of exchange and gain on a P&L, some system.
In the back? Can't see who it is.
Question, the dividend that goes back to the members, is it just divided by 594? Is it based on the number of invoices you upload?
So, sorry, come again, because I didn't get that.
The dividend that is returned, like the, I think it was $1 million, that is returned to the...
No, that's your saving if you go with netting. That's,
Right.
So it's not something that we gain and then give back to you. So currently it will cost the whole membership about, again, assumptions about 1.3 million to do their payments. If we don't do that any longer and we do it through netting, it will cost you about 30,000. So that saving, you no longer have that cost, let's put it this way. Okay?
It's not a dividend per se, Dan. If you give us your personal banking information, we can see what we can do to get some money too.
Any other questions? Yes, over there?
I heard you saying that now still the company is going to pay, but not to the member, but to a common bank. That netting system will have that, right? You said still the system is only a system, but the payment will still come from the member to the netting system.
It will go from your bank
Yeah.
to the netting center.
Netting center. Okay. The second question is, I know you said it's a debtors, who need to upload the invoice, but then if the debtor delay the invoice and invoice is already like a month old, or for whatever reason he has not uploaded, so will the system accept the date of the invoice or the date the debtor is going to upload that?
So you're referring to the invoice due date, right?
Exactly.
The invoice due date is a certain date, but the netting cycle maybe is around that date, right?
That's okay, but then there is a credit which the mutual party will agree to. Suppose we agreed for 45 or 60 days, but then now today we are in May and the invoice belongs to say February or March, but then the cycle will start.
Correct.
The credit term will be as per the invoice date, or the system the debtor will upload the invoice.
Svante, I'll take a crack, but it's the period in which it's uploaded. This is a monthly period that we deal with. If it's uploaded in that period, the date of that invoice is immaterial. It's based on when it was uploaded, and when it's uploaded, it's agreed to, it gets paid in that period. So I think the date of the invoice is almost immaterial.
At that time it is, yeah.
Yeah?
It's the due date.
So it's really, that's between you and your partner?
No, he said it's due date. You said the due date? Because due date, every invoice will have its due date.
Correct.
Based on the credit term.
Invoices due in that netting cycle are paid on the netting.
You would not upload the invoice and say it's payable 3 cycles from now. The cycle is the cycle. It's uploaded, it's cleansed, it's distributed, it's netted. Then we start fresh with a brand new cycle at 0. Fair?
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well on time, I think. Yeah? Okay, then I want to thank Svante for being here and for giving more clarification. He's around this afternoon, if you like, during the Tour for All. If you want to grab him and ask him more questions, he's there for you. Thanks, Derek, for stepping in. Thank you all for being there. Any questions, let me know. This afternoon, Tour for All, departure, 1 o'clock in the lobby level. And I'm not sure what the weather looks like outside because there's no windows here.